Welcome back to this week's episode of Karen's Bookshelf. Now, I'm incredibly excited today because I'm here with author Graeme Simsion. Graeme, thank you so much for joining me today. Of course, your name needs no introduction, of course, with the Rosie series. When you were writing this book, did you expect it to be as successful? Because it's impacted so many people around the world, hasn't it?
Well, this book, yes, because it was the third in the series.
Yeah.
But when I was writing the Rosie Project, look, I don't think anybody expects to sell 3.5 million copies of a book that they're writing. What you're dreaming about is seeing it on a book that's getting published, seeing it in the bookstore somewhere. So, no, it just blew me away.
And Don Tillman, I think and probably everybody else who's read the trilogy, we've really fallen in love with him. Are we going to be seeing more books about him in the future, do you think? No?
Look, never say never, but I've closed off this book with what I hope is a satisfying end to the trilogy.
Yeah.
There is a little supplementary book called Don Tillman's Standardised Meal System, which it's not actually published in the UK, but it's available online if you want to get it, and that's a little bit of fun,
nice.
just for people who wanted to hear Don Tillman's voice again. And look, I have to say, there are times when I want to comment on something that's happening in the world and would love to have that voice of Don Tillman offering his views. But for the moment, I'm working on other projects.
Okay, great. And what about, obviously it's many authors' dreams to go from book to screen. Is that something we can expect in the future? I know there was rumours of Ryan Reynolds being involved in film projects.
Well, I actually started off as a screenwriter, and my original motivation for writing the Rosie Project was to get my screenplay up and get it noticed. But once you get into writing a novel, you forget about all that. You just try to write the best novel you possibly can. I like to think that film rights are like, and Sony Pictures has actually purchased outright the rights for the Rosie Project and for the whole series. And I think it's like having a lottery ticket in your back pocket. You might be lucky and they make the movie, and we've had Jennifer Lawrence attached, we've had Ryan Reynolds attached, we've had Richard Linklater attached, we've had a whole heap of luminaries attached to the project, but they come and go. We haven't been able to line up all the stars, literally, to date, but I'm still optimistic that something will happen down the track.
Yeah, and I'm sure I'm not the only one hoping for that as well. I think it would be amazing to continue the series in that way, in a different format.
Let me tell you, I actually think this is the best book in the series. And the first book's a romantic comedy. It's obviously a natural for the screen. But this is the one I'd actually like to see up there. And there's talk of doing all three together. And I think that'd be fabulous.
Yeah, well, I really enjoyed it. And it's actually our book club pick for February. So,
Thank you.
So yes, it's really, really, really a good read. So you mentioned earlier that you were working on other projects. Can you share any of those?
Sure. I've got two things in the pipeline at the moment. The first is a sequel to Two Steps Forward, which is the book that I wrote with my wife, Anne Buist, it's set on the Camino de Santiago de Compostela, the famous pilgrim's walk in France and Spain. And we're writing a sequel to that with the same characters. So that's one. And the second is I want to do a book on the process of writing. I'm a pretty deliberate sort of writer. I've done a lot of teaching and quite a bit of mentoring, and I like to put some of that just down as a guide to people who frequently come to me looking for advice on novel writing.
Yeah, amazing. I would definitely read that for sure.
Okay, that's one.
Yes.
I'll hold you to that.
Absolutely. And talking of working with your wife, I believe you each wrote a chapter for the first book.
Yeah, look, it's this funny thing. People say to me, how on earth did you manage to work with your wife? What would motivate you to do that? As though it was a really crazy thing to do. Did your marriage survive it? And I thought, call me crazy, but when my wife and I got together, our dream was to sort of spend time doing things we both love doing, which is writing. So, in fact, writing a book together, especially one that draws on our travels, is almost like opening a photo album for the memories and going through it. It's doing something creative together. It's a great thing to talk about over a glass of wine, over dinner and so on, like how we're going to make this work. Yeah. So you're doing something creative together. I think this is my best book. I think, I have no doubt that Two Steps Forward was the most fun book to write.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And I think quite refreshing way to write as well, because normally it's quite solitary, isn't it? To have somebody to bounce ideas off must be really good.
Yeah, look, we're both probably extroverts. We both enjoy we both enjoy kicking ideas around, and we still write. The actual drafting of the book is a solitary experience, but the planning and the editing is very collaborative.
Yeah, nice. So you mentioned earlier that you're planning to write a book which has writing tips and advice, for people. If there was a single piece of advice, the most important single piece of advice that you've received or given yourself, would you be able to share it with the viewers today?
Yeah, I'd say writing is a profession. I would say, particularly to say a young writer, I'd say, the person who wants to be a neurosurgeon, how hard they're working? Well, plan to work that hard yourself, because there are less jobs for writers of fiction than there are for neurosurgeons. And it's just that attitude that writing, people say, oh, writing, I'm a natural, somewhere you're not, whatever. I say it's a profession, you've got to do a lot of work, and if you put that work in, I think you've got a very good chance of success.
Amazing advice. Graeme, thank you so much for joining me today and taking the time out of the festival, because I know you're highly in demand here this time. So yeah, it's really good to meet you.
Well, pleasure to be here, and I will hold you to that promise to buy a copy of my book on writing when it comes out.
For sure, for sure. Thank you so much for joining me today on Karen's Bookshelf, and I look forward to seeing you again next week.